Welcome to this Techies webinar. I'm Sujit John, and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate the discussion. We hope you and your families are staying safe and doing well. Our discussion today is in association with PMI, one of the world's leading project management institutes. It's a US-based, not-for-profit professional organization, and it has a very vibrant chapter in India. Its certifications add enormous value to professionals. We had a discussion with PMI last month on the growing importance of program management as enterprises accelerate their digital transformation journeys. Program management is the ability to manage multiple projects in a way that you meet larger business objectives. Today, we'll discuss the importance of program management in reducing complexity and improving value delivery. For that, we have with us three distinguished professionals. We have with us Dr. Ed Hoffman. Dr. Hoffman is CEO of Knowledge Strategies and is engaged in research, education, and consulting services in support of organization performance. Dr. Hoffman was in NASA for over 25 years. He was appointed the first NASA Chief Knowledge Officer in 2011 and held responsibility for system-wide strategy, integration, and deployment of knowledge services. Dr. Hoffman currently also serves as Senior Lecturer for the Information and Knowledge Strategy Program at the Columbia University School of Professional Studies. He supports the Project Management Institute as a strategic advisor with a focus on integrated systems for talent management, knowledge management, and learning strategies. Dr. Hoffman is participating on this panel from the US. It's morning for him. He's near Washington. Welcome, Dr. Hoffman.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Sujit.
We have with us Mr. Suneet Prakash. Suneet is President and Head of Projects for Chemicals at Grasim. Grasim, as many would know, is an Aditya Birla Group company. He's a certified project management professional from PMI, and he's been a member of PMI's Global Executive Council. He has 35 years of experience in program and project management with leading international companies in a leadership role both in India and abroad. Prior to his current role, Suneet was Group Head for projects in Aditya Birla Group, responsible for project governance, approval, strategy, and monitoring of all projects undertaken by the group worldwide. Welcome, Suneet.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you. And we have with us Dr. Srinivasan. Srini is Regional Managing Director for South Asia in PMI. He also leads the PMI IT Systems Working Group. Srini has over 30 years of global experience as a CEO, business unit leader, business builder, and an entrepreneur at the intersection of professional services and technology. Before coming to PMI, he was the Managing Director of Arthur D. Little India. He has also served in various leadership roles at Altron Technologies and the Hay Group. Welcome, Srini. Those of you who are viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I will put them to Dr. Hoffman, Suneet, and Srini. Let me put the first question to Dr. Hoffman. Why is program management so critical for businesses? And can you give us some examples from your work at NASA?
Absolutely. So let me start with a quote, because I want to kind of frame really the world is about programs and projects. Joe Stiglitz is a recent Nobel Prize winning economist, and he conveys the following thing. He says, in the 21st century, the only source of competitive advantage for a company or a nation is finding a new idea and incorporating it, nothing else. And if you look at, I'm a projects guy, I'm a learning guy, I'm not an economist, but I track the economists because what they do is they look to measure wealth from companies, wealth from nations. And that is the common view nowadays, that to make wealth, to have success, you have an idea, but you have to have that idea and you have to be able to incorporate it or make it a reality. And therefore, we're in a world of programs and projects. So let me go to the second part of the question, NASA. When NASA started, it was in the late 1950s, 1958. Its mission, its idea was, how do you send humans to the moon and return it? NASA became, I think, one of the first totally projectized organizations. Why? Because it has to. Because when you have an idea nowadays, you have the power, you have the capability through technologies to do things fast, but you need a few things. One, you need the talent of your people, and you need to be able to have them working together with the different problems, with the different challenges, with working globally, with dealing with how do you do things cost effectively? How do you do things within a timeline? And how do you make sure you deliver high quality? If you have a mission of going to the moon, or the newest NASA mission, my colleague Greg Robinson was the director of the James Webb Space Telescope, just went up a week ago. You have to have quality. It's not about just doing it, and if it fails, a failure basically means you've lost billions of dollars. At the same time, there's pressure to do it fast, do it cheap. People don't want to spend things; they want it to be competitive. So we're living in a world where everyone has ideas. Those ideas are incredibly complex. They're global. They're impacting health. They're impacting pharmacy. They're impacting the way manufacturing is done. And it's being done through projects because it has all the tools for pulling talent from around the world together, for tracking costs, for being able to watch where the schedule is, and for using tools to make sure that it's going in the direction you want. But it's the idea and the ability to make it happen. That's basically where wealth is, and that's the driver.
There was typically a lot of projects that would go towards one program, is it?
Yeah, so at NASA, for example, you asked me, and I continue to work with NASA while I'm at PMI. If you're looking at one of the emphases that they have is understanding Mars. What's the climate issues of Mars that we can learn from for climate on Earth? How do you eventually send people potentially to habitate that environment? So you have this large program, which in NASA terms is something continuous, something ongoing, a larger kind of mission direction. And then they will have, in that case, dozens of projects, which will typically stop and start, and that will contribute to the overall mission that's taking place. As a way to make the complexity easier. You have the overall vision, but then you have projects that can succeed and fail and get you closer to the point, and it manages the threats and the risks that are involved.
Okay. We'll come back to that point on how you bring everything together. But Suneet, same question to you. Your experiences in this.
Well,
you have managed major, a huge organization with lots of companies in it.
yeah. So I think the question which was asked to Ed was, what are the complexities and why do big companies need program management? Am I right in understanding the question before I start speaking on that? Yeah, okay. So I think, Sujit and Shilpa, I think today's world, the resources are very limited. When I say resources, it is not just people, it is also the capital. Most companies have limited capital for capex expansion or for that matter, for people. Resources is also people, getting the right skill set of people. So when a company wants to expand its footprint or expand its delivery or introduce a new product or gain more market share in any of the things that they're doing, obviously there are two ways of going about it. One is an organic way and one is an inorganic way. Here we are talking about the inorganic way, about the organic way, not the inorganic. Inorganic would be I buy a company which makes a certain product which I want to push into the market and be done with it. That's not the growth I'm talking about. I'm talking about the organic growth which comes from within the company. And this growth essentially comes from projects, programs, and portfolios. So here in this discussion, I know we are focusing on program and project management, but the overall umbrella which covers the program management and then the program management covers the project management is the portfolio management. If I have $100 million, then I will decide which portfolios. Should I go into artificial intelligence? Should I go into cloud computing? Should I go into brick and mortar? That's portfolio. And within the portfolio, once I have decided upon the allocation of my resources, then I decide that, okay, I will run a program. I will run a program in such a manner that it will comprise of several sub-projects. Projects are a subset of program. Program is the big set, projects are a subset. And then we split the program into several projects. The projects could be headed by project managers, or the program manager could be heading one or two projects. That entirely depends upon the complexities. And then that is how we overcome this capital problem, the resource problem, because what program management does is a very effective use of the resources that you have. And Sujit, as an industry veteran, I can tell you, today we have a very large population, we have a large number of engineers, but whenever we go out and try to recruit people of a particular skill set, whatever it is, whether it is digital, whether it is core engineering, whether it is planning, I have always faced gaps. And this is one of my biggest challenges in putting a program effectively, because program is made by its people. And if you don't get the right skill set, then it becomes very difficult. So when you do program management, you can shuffle your resources. If you have scarce resources, there's a lot of synergy to be derived. And that is the advantage which program managers get. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Any particular anecdote or any particular program that you can think of that you successfully accomplished?
Yeah, I'll give you some examples from projects which are not very digital in nature, although digital is embedded into everything today. Artificial intelligence is embedded almost into everything. But I can tell you about some brick and mortar projects which I've been running, where we are building new factories, for instance, to expand our capacities. And so we ran it like a program, Sujit. Instead of running it like a project where I just build a factory and expanded the resources, I built it. I did the whole thing as a program, and I included several projects into it. The edge it gave me is that some of the resources, like some of the civil engineers who are required to actually go design and construct factories, we could leverage their services between two projects because we were falling short of those skill sets. So these type of things do happen, and it worked to our advantage. And yeah, that's how it went. Yeah.
Okay. So in this particular project, what are the different projects? Can you some anecdotes? Some projects you can.
So this is a brick and mortar project. There was a power project in this where we generated 45 megawatt of electricity using coal boilers. Then there was a very specialized chemical project which was coming in the same premises.
Okay.
So the power project would be commissioned and it would supply project to the chemical project. So instead of doing it as two disparate projects completely,
right,
they remain disparate, but they came under an umbrella of a project program manager, which in this case was me actually. And then that is how I moved resources from the power project when the civil work was over, and then this civil work was just about starting. I could manage to sort of equalize that skill gap that I had by moving my resources around a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Srini, to bring you in here, program manager, I'm sure it's very complex. I mean, so how do you deal with the complexity in program management?
Sujit, let me give you an example of complexity. Most of us have gotten used to wanting to talk to our own personal automobiles and want those automobiles to talk back to us. So we are all looking for connected vehicles so that vehicle can, for example, provide some online theft protection, can do remote diagnostics, in addition to being able to do emails, being able to play music from your phone, and so on. So if you imagine that you are an automobile manufacturer, you might want to think about, for example, on one axis, for this particular program of a connected vehicle, or as they call it, telematics. On one axis, you have all of these technologies that both Ed and Sujit have talked about: artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, hardware, software, datamatics, and all of that. And then on the other axis, you have several different disciplines that have to come together. So for example, you need people who understand satellite technology. You need people who understand the vehicle platform configuration. You need people who understand global positioning systems. You need people who understand cellular, because all of these are built into the ability of the car to talk to you and for you to talk to the car. So that is the level of complexity, because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, if you were the automobile manufacturer, all you had to worry about was the platform of the car, the chassis, the engine, the frame. But now it's a lot more than just that, because I'm not just looking for a chassis and a frame. I'm looking for a car that is connected to me in every way possible. So that is the level of complexity that we're talking about. And therefore, if I'm that manufacturer, I need to have the ability to bring all of this together under one umbrella, as Suneet has just mentioned, and be able to put it together, to integrate it. So one of the biggest lessons we've learned in working with organizations is the key role of program management is to integrate all these different streams. Otherwise, again, as both Ed and Suneet have already mentioned, they're standalone silos. And standalone silos we can do, but those silos have to be connected, they have to talk to each other, and they all have to be contributing to the overall mission. And that is the trick. And the ability to integrate technologies, platforms, people, skills, and methods is really what is unique to program management. And virtually nobody else within an organization has that ability.
So what are the tricks of the trade there? What are the elements of making it? And that's the question to all of you, but Srini, go ahead.
We did a lot of work with MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and with the International Council on Systems Engineering, INCOSE. And Ed Hoffman was very, very involved in that. And we studied how organizations handle complexity in programs. And one of the key things we learned is, as I said, integration, being able to pull all of this together. And what that involved in best practice organizations is, first of all, creating some standards in terms of processes, practices, and tools. So you create minimum standards. Obviously, there is more that can be done and will be done, but there's a minimum set of standards so that all the projects within a program are speaking the same language, if you will. The other aspect is, again, Ed touched upon this, is people competency. How do we make sure that we have the right people? As Suneet said, he has trouble finding the right skills. So how do we have the right competencies that are required for these different roles? And then how do we either find the right people or train people in those competencies? And the third aspect, which won't come as a surprise to anybody in this audience, that is to become more aware of the context of the environment within which this program is operating. So what is the expectation of senior management? What is the expectation of stakeholders? Because in a program like this, the other complexity, which I forgot to mention, is you could have representatives of your competitors who are providing technologies, for example. You could have representatives of the customer. You could have representatives of the customer's customer. And so how do you manage the expectations of these stakeholders? So those are some of the things that we have learned in terms of how best practice organizations handle this complexity and make it work.
Okay, okay. Dr. Hoffman, same question to you. I mean, speaking the
Yeah.
same language and all of that, how do you ensure all of that in a massive project, the kinds that you would have dealt with?
Yeah. One of the things I would really emphasize what both Suneet and Srini said is sometimes we tend to think of projects or programs just about the processes and the tools, and they're important. But really the complexity is at the human level. It's can you get the talent? And it's not as straightforward. You know, for example, I'm working with a leader at Google who big data firm, right? Technology, very straightforward. Tamika Vasquez heads up marketing for Sidewalk Labs. And their whole mission is how do you improve urban environments? How do you improve cities, right? This gets into things of green technologies, electrification in country areas, health, all these factors. Is Sidewalk Labs a IT firm? Is it a data firm? Is it a social responsibility firm? What talent do you need? And so when you talk with Tamika leading that mission, it's what is the talent, the expertise you need, and how do you get people from different areas to work together? You can see that in Tesla, Elon Musk. You know, is that a automotive company? It's certainly not a traditional one. They certainly don't use the talent that a traditional automotive company. Is it a data IT firm? It's a mix of all these things, and that's what really these projects are. They're mixes to come together to take on typically tremendous challenges of society, of technology, and pulling together different people with different capabilities, and then managing that through the variety of the tools. But I would say the emphasis goes into the starting point, and the way to deal with the complexity is understanding what is it we're trying to do, and then what is the talent that we need, and how do we work with different talented people, typically from around the world.
So as Srini said, the context awareness is absolutely critical. What are we ultimately trying to do? And then you get the people and the processes together. Yeah, and as also said, the same language. Everybody ensures some standardization so that everybody speaks the same language. Suneet, you want to add to that?
Well, I think between Srini and Ed, they've covered most of it, so I don't want to repeat it. But I just another facet that I want to introduce here is in terms of people skills. We invest a lot of money in upgrading the skills of people that we hire, because we never ever get a straight fit. And the other complexity in these programs and projects is that the technology is ever changing. So we have to keep learning. Even at my age, after 35 years, I was telling you when we were just having a chat before the program, I'm still learning. And I expect the same from the people who work for me. They should have a very open mind to learn. And that is where we engage with educational institutions, specialized institutions, universities, engineering colleges, organizations like PMI, for instance. You know, there's a lot of information available. It's just that we have to have programs where we can sponsor our people, we can encourage them to learn, we can have some sort of a reward system for people who continuously update their skills. And this, I think, is one of the biggest complexity. I know Ed has spoken about it, and so has Srini, and I'm just adding that. And of course, processes are, of course, the backbone of any systems in any given situation. Without processes, even with good people, things can fall. So on the backbone of good project governance, having the right skill set, I think that is the recipe for success, I would say.
Right skill set. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I grew up writing for newspapers, and here I am now learning to moderate webinars and online stuff. So I'm also learning, Suneet.
Yeah.
Shilpa?
Yeah, hi. This question is for all three of you. What are the key competencies of project managers in current times, especially when there are hybrid work models emerging and evolving?
Srini, you want to take that first?
Let me defer to Ed and Suneet because they've done a lot of work in this area. Then I will add to it.
So at NASA, I'll take a shot. One of the things that we worried about is at least 5 areas. One of the 3 of them are fairly straightforward. One is, how do you pay for this thing? How do you manage the cost? If you're running a $1 billion program and it goes 20% over, that's a lot of money. And it's the citizens. NASA is a government organization. A large amount of program and project management happens for government. Citizens don't like, and politicians don't like to see costs rise. Another factor is, when are things going to be done, right? You promise building a road by a certain date. People want it to be done in that framework. So how do you manage that? And then there's the biggest issue is the social or the human risk. Do you have the talent you need? Do you have people working effectively together? The biggest issue, as we've been talking about right now, is really projects are about people. And sometimes people really like to work together. Sometimes people don't. It has an impact in terms of the outcome. The other things that I think are very important skills to keep in mind is most programs nowadays are global. They're international. 90% of every NASA project is an international collaboration. So it's collaborating with the Indian Space Research Organization, collaborating with the European Space Agency. Cultures are different. Terminologies, languages are different. And so how do you work effectively together when you are implicitly working with different cultures, different ways of doing things? The other thing that I think is the increasing vital skill that we see is technology. Digital, artificial intelligence, robotics. They're sometimes taken for granted, but they're at the center of things, and they can either be a tremendous help or they can be a cause for failure. So these 5 issues are always there. You have to be good at the cost, the schedule, the human element, the technology, and the fact that you're working across cultures on virtually everything that you're doing.
And 2 people don't like to work with each other. What do you do, Dr. Hoffman?
I always say at NASA, the most important thing, I'd get in front of a team that we had maybe of 10, 30, sometimes 300 people. And they said the most important thing is you have to determine if you want to work together, to collaborate, to be successful with the mission. And if you don't want to work with the other people on this team, then we got to deal with it. Either we got to solve it or we got to get different people. Because again, everything is done with government, with 90% is industry, supply chain, all different industries coming together, with different countries, for politicians, with academia. These are people who often don't work together. The vital ingredient is you have to have that. So that to me is a flag. If I'm concerned about the ability, and one of the questions I'll ask simplistic is, are you 110% committed to working on this team for this mission? And if I don't see every hand go up, we have to have a discussion about what's getting in the way.
Were there issues like this when the Columbia and Challenger accidents and all happened?
It was actually, yes. Yeah, if you look at, and I'd always used to say, look at the failures of an organization. It's very important to look at both the successes you're having, but also the failures. And I'm familiar with all the failures NASA had over a 30-year period. And at the core was always issues around the human element. Sometimes it would play out in terms of we didn't do systems integration. Integration is a major issue. It's hard to integrate when you're not communicating together, right? Sometimes it's a communication issue. Communications aren't going to take place if you aren't totally committed to if you don't trust your team. So, but at the core, it is this human element of virtually every failure that I've ever seen, small one and huge ones like Challenger, like Columbia. All those factors came down to the human collaboration or the lack of it.
Suneet?
Yeah, I think well put, Ed. And just to add on to what Ed said, I think a program manager or a project manager, one of the essential skills which I look at in people is the risk mitigation capability. All these programs and projects are beset with risks. And program manager has to be always 2 steps ahead of others in the team as the leader of the program. He has to really see that there is this risk coming my way. It could be any risk. It could be a technical risk. It could be a resource related risk. It could be a technology risk. It could be anything. There are always risks. And if a good program manager or a project manager cannot handle those risks, then the outcomes are fairly predictable.
What is needed to ensure that you are able to handle it? What kind of quality is required?
Very good analytical skills and planning skills. You have to be in touch with what are the latest trends. You have to pick up signs. There are always signs of some trouble. So that ability to analyze the figures which are coming in front of you and see that this, if it is not attended in time, will then blow up into a crisis, into a risk. And if it is not addressed, then it can jeopardize the entire project. I think those type of skills are very important in any program manager, apart from the other skills that Ed rightly pointed out.
Got it.
The other thing which Sujit, I wanted to say is communication. Now, PMI has a book called PM BOK, which I have read multiple
PM what?
times. PM BOK. It's a project management book of knowledge. PMBOK, it's called PM BOK. So it's there, and it's Srini can tell you the latest edition of PM BOK, 7th or 8th, I don't know. It's around that, 6th or 7th. Doesn't matter. PM BOK, when I took my PMP exam many, many years ago, it says that the single most important criteria or the trait which a project manager should have is good communication skills. I don't think it has changed, although technical skills since those times have sort of taken a precedence, and now technical skills are probably as important as communication skills. But that doesn't take anything away from the need for good communication skills for a successful program manager or a project manager. There, we spend a lot of time in talking to people, in writing to people, in in understanding people and listening to people. And if you don't have those skills, I think so. These days, when the programs are being run on a very global basis, there are hybrid teams where people working from Philippines and from India, and the client could be sitting in the US or in some other part of the world. There is even a more enhanced need for a very, very seamless communication. And I think this is one of the skills. This is one of the challenges also, because in COVID times, different time zones, people working from home, it's not been easy, I must say that.
Yeah.
And this is something which people are still learning, this whole hybrid model and all that. Because even though they were working remotely, there was a team in the US, there was a team in Germany, there was a team in India, and they were working together even before COVID. But they were all working from the offices, most of them. Now, in this new culture, even the team in India has got dispersed. So everybody is his own office in his house or in her house. So we have a dispersion within a dispersed team. So how does a program manager integrate all these elements and then still talk to his clients or wherever his stakeholders are? That's a bit of a challenge, Sujit.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Different
Can
languages.
I follow up on that?
Yeah.
Can
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
sure.
say, because I'm getting too excited by the conversation. What Suneet said is so vital, and particularly inexperienced people in projects will overlook it. The biggest cause for failure that I've seen is the lack of this ability to communicate honestly the risks that are there. Usually people on a team will see something, but there's a term that's popular now called psychological safety. Psychological safety. It means that I can be honest with you about what's going on. Now think about that. If I'm working for Srini and Suneet, I'm here in Washington, they're in India, we're virtual. Am I going to be comfortable to say anything that I need to say for the benefit of our team? And it's harder when you're at a distance. Is he going to want to hear this? Will I stay a part of the team if I tell them what I honestly think? Biggest issue of this risk of identifying it, of integration, of working across the system, of working with global communities is can we be honest with each other? So we see issues, we see challenges, and we can step up and address it. And sometimes it could be we're being too nice to each other, right? Because and that's one of the things I'd always point out to NASA folks. I'd like you to raise a problem in a nice way, but if you can't, shout it to me, because you cannot withhold things. You cannot be afraid. We have to have that safe climate. That's climate. Very important point that we've all been talking about.
Okay, very interesting point. Psychological safety, very interesting. Srini, you want?
Sujit, I would put the answer to your question in a slightly different frame. What we have learned at PMI, especially during COVID and before that, is there are 3 dimensions of skills that are crucial for program managers. One is this broad umbrella that has already been talked about, technical skills, but the nature of those technical skills are very different today, as Suneet pointed out. So technical skills in the form of learning how to do digital transformation, how to be able to effectively handle the cloud, how to optimize application landscapes and technologies. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is what we call business acumen, business focus. Again, that's already come up. But a program manager needs to understand the business of what this program is all about. Because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was okay for me as a project manager to simply focus on schedule and budget. And that's what I was rated on. The business objectives may or may not have been met, but at least I brought the project in on time, on budget. But today the focus has shifted completely. The focus is on, are the business objectives being met? Is the mission of the program being met? And so a program manager needs to really understand the business aspects, the language of the business. So it's about the value that is being provided. So you'll probably hear terms like value drivers. What are the different elements of value that is being that is expected to be created? Because the other part, and Ed talked about this a few minutes ago, is virtually every program is expected to do something different or better than what was there before. So it's not a repetition. It is something where there is a lot of innovation required, where there is a lot of creativity required. So you have to do something better, differently, faster, cheaper in many cases. So for example, time to market for your product. So your product in COVID times needs to be in stores, virtual stores, say 3 months sooner than what it used to be before, because customer preferences are changing and so on. So that's the second dimension, the business acumen of the business focus. And then the third dimension, which has already been talked about, is what we at PMI call collaboration skills. So being able to collaborate with people in remotely, globally, different cultures, different languages, and so on, but being able to collaborate with people and take them with you. So once again, I just want to point out the typical program may have representatives of your company, the usual suspects, team members, but it could also, within your own organization, could include other support functions like HR, like procurement, like IT. And then on top of that, you may have representatives, as I said before, from your customer, from competitors who are part of this program because they supply some technology that you need, and so on and so forth. So how do you take all of these people along with you? in a collaborative way, but pushing them to the objective. So those are the three dimensions: the technical skills, the business acumen, and then the collaboration skills.
The tools, or what do you think of the current tools for collaboration? Do they still require a lot of improvement? Are they working well virtually?
There have been quite a few tools already in existence even before COVID, but I think the focus has become much sharper now because of COVID, because of what Suneet talked about, dispersion within dispersion. So you have layers of dispersion. So what we've learned is some aspect of design thinking, some aspect of people collaboration, a combination of those two work best. So for example, at PMI, we've created this entire new portfolio called Wicked Problem Solving. That's just a name, but the idea is, how do you solve problems in this remote group that you're working with, and all the cultural and technological issues that are part of it. So what we've learned is it's a combination of design thinking and collaboration skills. So those two seem to provide the right mix of skills to be able to make people work together.
Okay. Dr. Hoffman, there's an interesting question here from somebody from Rahul HS in the audience, asking, what are some of the program management practices pioneered by space agencies like NASA, which went on to become mainstream?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, when I went to school, I minored in history. So I have a value of learning from it, and I like stories. NASA, again, it started program project management in the 1958. It started, and really it was a time of, what is a project? How do you do it? And it's gone through different changes. I think a couple of the fundamental things that we focused on at NASA that became something that's used is, one, the importance of just planning. That you can't you can't just take on something. You have to think about it. How do you plan it out? How do you organize it? I think, how do you look at the different ways of pulling together talented people from different locations in a country and from different countries, and how do you manage that? How do you measure it? How do you track that? There are all kinds of tools, data tools, technologies that are used to instantaneously track what's going on. I'm smiling about that because I'm looking at LinkedIn and I'm seeing Times Techies, and I'm seeing comments and questions here. And in essence, that's one of the things that you would see at NASA, where they're getting data from all sources. And so if you look at a typical program office, you have multiple computers. Someone's looking at their prime computer for their work, for the conversation, but then they're looking off to see what's being said and the notes that are coming. So that kind of, I think, overall sense of using collectively all the tools and technologies that we've been mentioning, but relying on people that are kind of informing you with the different data that's out there. I think this whole focus on data analytics, the use of technologies doing more and more of the hard work that humans did 50 years ago in terms of projects, freeing us up to be more creative and to take on more complexity that's out there. So, but again, I always said fundamentally for the questioner, NASA was born as a program and a project organization. They don't know any other way to get a mission done. So everything evolved from that.
Okay. Shilpa?
Yeah, we have this question for Mr. Suneet Prakash. This is from Nikhil Bhatt. How widely is risk management followed in practical life? Have you seen many project delays due to timelines or budget overshoots, even after monitoring it closely due to risks that were not thought through well enough? Any insights on this?
Well, Nikhil, I think that's a good question. Risks have to be mitigated. There's no doubt about it. But mitigating the risk doesn't mean that you have then ground them to zero. because there are certain residual risks which always remain in any project, which are impossible to mitigate, or the cost of mitigating them is so prohibitive that people learn to live with those risks rather than spending a huge amount of money in mitigating those risks. To answer your question, there are several projects where we do the risk analysis. And risk analysis is an ongoing thing. It's not that you do it in the front of the project and then you forget about it. So there are ways to control risk, and I'm not going to go into many technical details, but there is a risk register where you put down the risk, you grade those risks, you see what is the probability of getting those risks and what is the cost of mitigation. And then you decide who will mitigate those risks. So this is one part of the story, but the projects still suffer, as you rightly said. My projects are suffering today despite doing a very robust risk management because of certain things which are not in my hands. The commodity prices have gone up. The supply chains around the world have got completely disrupted. We order a lot of equipment and semiconductors and silicon and this and that from different parts of the world. This entire chain has got, so no matter how much have you foreseen, who had foreseen that there would be COVID? So sometimes it is not possible to foresee each and every risk which could happen. The best you can hope is that get it right as much as you can. I don't want to put a figure, 70, 80, 90%, but 100% I think is not possible.
Suneet, in the Aditya Birla Group, there is a designation called Program Manager. How does it work?
Yes, this is a new thing, Sujit, actually. We just introduced that. So many of the businesses within Aditya Birla now have a program designation, a person called Program Manager, and he heads several programs or one large program. So it's something which is just starting to pick up. Earlier we had project managers, project directors, but now we are beginning to have program managers as well.
Okay. And the value delivery part of it, I guess that must be uppermost in their minds, right?
Absolutely. Program is very strategic. So it is always about delivering a value proposition and not something in piecemeal. So it always looks at several things and it brings them on the same table and then delivers them to the stakeholder. So there is always a big value which comes along with the program. So for example, here I would say that if you want to increase your market share in anything, so that you could integrate with building that capacity first to produce that. Suppose I make fertilizer and I want to increase my sale of fertilizer from X% to Y%. So there would be two components. First, my production should increase from X to Y, and then my marketing should also increase. So I could include it under a program where a part of the program looks at the marketing part and the part of the program looks at the technical upgradation in capacities. And they could be then integrated to deliver a value where the stakeholders get a better return. So this is how it works, Sujit.
Okay. So basically 1 + 1 should add up to much more than 2.
Much more than 4.
Okay. Srini and Suneet, both of you can probably pitch into this question from Rakesh Bishwas, asking, can learnings from delivery operations management be brought into program management? Another related question he says is, can someone who has managed the operation of creative teams move to a project management role of a project that is more technical in nature, example, application development maintenance? Okay. You understand
let me take a shot at the second question first. This is at the heart of the dilemma that many organizations face. And both Ed and Suneet have already talked about that. So the challenge now is to actually create a multi-dimensional program manager, because historically, as we talked about in the previous webinar as well, historically organizations tend to grow program managers in one discipline. And they are a subject matter expert in a discipline. And over time, they are taking more and more responsibility. Nothing wrong with that. But when you talk about multidisciplinary programs, this person does not need to be an expert in all of those programs, but needs to know enough about each aspect and how to bring it together. So therefore, my answer to the second question is, it's absolutely possible and should be encouraged that somebody who started, say, in a non-technical type of project or program to migrate to a more technical program. There, again, the competencies required are enough understanding of each of the different technologies and disciplines to be able to pull it together. And some companies have created what they call archetypes. So the Googles, the Microsofts, the Amazons, and so on, they've created archetypes of what they call program management capability. And for each, so if it's a, for example, if it's a, as Suneet talked about, it's a B2C product, a fertilizer, then there is a particular archetype for it. If there is a B2B product, then there's a particular archetype for it, and so on. So I think it is something that most companies, organizations are learning to encourage.
Okay. Dr. Hoffman, you of course work with a lot of businesses now as part of knowledge services, and you teach at Columbia. I mean, as program management, all of these things that we just discussed, is that becoming a very important part of all that you do?
It's essential. It's funny for me because the Columbia University students I teach are typically not starting out as project people. They are usually in strategy parts of their organization. They are in technology parts, they're in data. But as they want to take their product, their idea, their concept in any kind of scalable way, they recognize the essential skill is project and program management, right? You know, I said at that beginning, there are two things in organizations that drive wealth: having the idea, and that's hard to get the right idea, but then it's the ability to execute it. And so project management, I would say, is seen at Columbia. I think it was listed 2 years ago as one of the 4 essential skills for being successful. And my students tend to be good at the digital. They tend to be good at the strategic. And the issue that they want more expertise on is how to manage it from the standpoint of a project. So it's definitely an essential capability these days.
Okay, very interesting. Shilpa?
Yeah, as of now, we don't. We have this audience question from Vaishnavi Thakur. How can managers and leaders train their teams to follow optimal program management practices? Should the learning be on the job, or does it require separate classroom virtual course?
Well, I can start answering that because that was my job, right, for over 30 years at NASA. There's always, I had, or we called it an 80-20, sometimes 90-10 rule. And, you know, I tended to work with project managers, with engineers, with scientists, and they would always rightfully say, look, the most important way you develop expertise in your business, in your field, is by hands-on work, by doing it. But then you have to have the learning, the development, the simulations, the rotations, the mentoring, the career development to bump up your expertise. And whether it's 20% learning and training or 10%, it doesn't matter. But the most important thing is always the experience of doing things, doing the work on the job, but then having platforms of learning to build up your capabilities when you need them. So that's how we approached it. And that was, when we had a large competency framework, skills in risk, skills in business management, skills in international collaboration. But NASA would always measure your expertise based on having demonstrated it, doing it. But then there would be courses and different ways of supporting it.
That's similar for you, Suneet?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It is proof of the pudding lies in eating. So you have to get your hands into it always. No matter how much you study in the classroom, eventually you have to deliver on the field. So it's always a mix of the two. But there was one term that Ed used, which I liked very much, which is losing somehow, I feel more and more its importance and relevance, is mentorship. I think mentorship is very, very important in these type of situations. So what we normally try to do is people whom we want to develop as program managers or project managers, we pick up that talent and we try to put them under our very experienced program managers and project managers as mentees, and so we have this mentor-mentee relationship, and that helps a lot. That helps a lot. Working closely with somebody very experienced, I think that cannot be negated. That is something outside the classroom and outside the operational thing. It's something which you do one to one, and there is a proper structure to it. So there is a mentor-mentee thing which works. We tried it as an experiment a few years back, and it really worked. I was myself mentored by somebody very senior in the group. I had the privilege of getting accepted by him, and it really helped me in my personal career. I would think so. Yeah.
Okay. But you also encourage people to take some of these professional courses.
Yes, absolutely. That's also very important.
Okay. Okay. Srini, you want to add to that?
The only other dimension I would add to that is institutional knowledge. Most organizations have a lot of experience, but it's in silos. It sits in different parts of the organization. How to bring that together into a knowledge management framework so that people within that organization can study, learn how things were done, what worked, what didn't work, especially in the context of that organization. So I would encourage that aspect as well.
Okay. We're almost out of time, but there's this question related to what you just said, Srini. Also, Arvind Krishnan asking, how is academia contributing to this field? Since program management seems to be industry heavy and is shaped by the corporates and organizations, is academia contributing to this field?
Academia is definitely contributing to it. And I think if you look across the board, it's not just eminent institutions like Columbia, but even closer to home, you have a number of colleges and universities who are focusing on this. There are programs that are electives within, say, for example, different engineering disciplines. So you could have a project and program management elective in civil engineering, mechanical, and so on. Then there are electives in MBA programs. And then on top of that, there are customized MBA programs focusing on program and project management. So academic institutions are contributing, as are a number of the ed tech firms who are also creating courses around this.
Okay, and research also happening, is it?
Very, very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay. Yeah, so Suneet, go on.
Yeah, just this is a very interesting topic because I think academia is contributing, but I would like to see more people from the actual project domain coming and talking to the students or even teaching like Ed does, for certain institutes. These are people who have spent a lifetime. So project management is not just about theory, it is about practice. And so I see that there could be some gap because it's not that what they're teaching is not relevant. It is extremely relevant to know the theory and what goes on behind and how you can do certain things in a more optimum manner. But it would also help a lot if we see a lot of people from the industry going and teaching, either teaching or at least talking to the students and aligning them with what the corporate needs from the academia. I think that alignment is still happening and it is not fully completed.
Okay. We are almost out of time. Dr. Hoffman, any one message to either program managers or to companies that you have?
Yeah, no, I think we've to me, it's been a really good conversation. It demonstrates the complexity that it takes to take a grand idea or societal challenge and execute it. And one of the things I would say to people to think about is, where do you find answers to the greatest challenges you have? Where do you find the knowledge? Where do you find the solutions? And this goes at the core of a lot of things we've been talking about. And it requires developing capability. It requires having standards. It requires conversations like this. I think the biggest need that I see from the students that I work with who are out there in firms is a lack of sense of where to find the project management answers for a lot of these things. So I think that's one of the things I would close on, is finding the solutions, finding the knowledge from our organization, our society, our world.
Finding the knowledge. Okay. Suneet, any?
I think that's about it. We are almost out of time, so I don't have anything further to add. It was a good conversation, Sujit and Shilpa. Thanks for moderating it. I really enjoyed listening to my fellow panelists. Thank you very much.
Srini, any last words? Srini, you're muted.
This is a very unique niche opportunity for people to really step up and take a leadership role within organizations. And it is not for the faint-hearted, but those that can step in and learn and do, they have an enormous future ahead of themselves.
Step in and learn, you have an enormous future. Thanks so much. It was a delight having all of you, Dr. Hoffman, Srini, Suneet. Wonderful conversation. Hope to have you again sometime. Thank you from Shilpa and me.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
weekend.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.